My name's Vicky Chamberlayne. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a midwife and I work in Nelson. I've been a midwife for 33 years and I love all of midwifery. But what I particularly love is keeping birth normal, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. When I was a self-employed midwife, I always wanted to have at least an 85% normal birth rate, because the World Health Organization says that 85% of women should be able to birth without any intervention. My stats often were around 85%. Of course, they sometimes drop down. Of course, they did drop down, and I'd always be disappointed and look back and think, now what is it? What's happened? Have there been too many epidurals? Have there been loads of inductions? Have women come to hospital too early? Have not enough women chosen home birth? I've always realised the importance of normal birth for women and for families. So today I'm going to talk about harnessing the power of birth and how to do this, the consequences of not doing this, and what happens when we don't, when this isn't achieved. If midwives don't keep birth normal, who will? We really have to be the guardians of normal birth, because no one else will do it. Perhaps women, of course it can come from women, often it's a grassroots reaction that brings birth back to normal. But as midwives, we're extremely important in keeping birth normal. We need to believe that women can give birth. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Our bodies are honed to give birth. Observing a truly natural birth in all its rawness is to sit in awe of woman and nature. And if you've never witnessed a wonderful raw birth, I think you have to ask yourself why. It's definitely more likely to be experienced in a home birth, and there are lots of subtle energies that are going on in the birthing space that we can't always understand. And all midwives and doctors, I think, would benefit from attending a few home births, just to see that women can do it, and just to know that really the power is in the woman's hands and we're just there as the facilitators. I always felt it was best not to disturb a woman in labour, especially once she was really in the flow. And now we know that biologically, thanks to the work of Sarah Buckley. We know all about the hormones and the biology of why this happens. So naturally produced oxytocin is really a midwife's best friend. So let's make friends with her. Let's know how to encourage her. So oxytocin is a very shy hormone, and there's certain conditions she needs to be at her best. She needs peace, safety, empathy, and love to be released. Oxytocin helps women manage emotionally and physiological responses during childbirth that could be extremely sensitive, stressful. And oxytocin turns it into an opportunity for expressing joy and love. Think how many times you've heard couples tell each other they love each other, particularly at the height of labour. I've heard women say, this is, or that was, a spiritual experience. Oxytocin is also released during sex, and the intensity of orgasm is related to oxytocin. So that tells you quite a lot. And when couples are falling in love and staring in each other's eyes for hours on end, and when mums and babies are staring at each other and bonding, that's the flow of oxytocin between two people. So oxytocin, beta endorphin, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and prolactin are the hormones of love and transcendence. So transcendence is being able to go beyond our normal boundaries. It's like going to another consciousness, which a lot of women will recognise if they've given birth. You do go to another planet, and you do see that in women's faces. And once you see that in a woman's face, that's when it's important not to disturb her. She also needs to be in the reptilian part of her brain, which is the most basic part of her brain. So the reptilian brain, This controls our basic functions like breathing, heart rate, temperature, digestion, excretion to a certain extent, and giving birth. And to realise how important the reptilian brain is, just think when you don't go for a poo all day, and the minute you get in, you have to run in and go to the toilet. It's because your body's relaxed. So that shows you how sensitive the reptilian brain is. And oxytocin is inhibited by the sympathetic nervous system. This is adrenaline and noradrenaline. Noradrenaline are flight and fight responses. So we need to keep fear, bright lights, loud noises and embarrassment out of the birthing space. Adrenaline will act as a brake on the labour, so disturb the woman at your peril. So much better if you can help her go into flow. Dr. Kirsten Moorborg researched oxytocin and found it helps mothers access an inborn female competence that helps with the transition to motherhood, makes it easier to give birth, easier to breastfeed, and helps with bonding. So a normal birth just makes everything so much easier. I mean, isn't that what we all want as midwives and as women? The baby will be fully alert and self-latch onto the breast. We can trust the baby too. No need to think, oh, do we need to wake the baby up? Has it fed enough? Hasn't it had enough? We can trust the baby. We can trust the woman. And this is what we want, isn't it? To make our lives easier. So we need to know how to be in this sacred space of birth, to fully respect the birthing woman and the wonderful hormones of birth and the reptilian brain. So firstly, we need to set the scene. This is a sacred space and we need to start with ourselves. We need to be grounded and centered, which I'm not very at the moment. So we need to know how to do that. We need to be aware of the emotional state we're in so that we can invite another, more helpful state. We can breathe calmly, deeply inhale and deeply exhale before we enter the room. And it's not, a deep breath isn't, it's breathing into our bellies, really settling ourselves, feeling our feet on the ground, and breathing out slowly and letting everything go. And it really works. I feel much more centered now. So try to leave our feelings at the birthing door and start anew. Prioritise the emotional well-being of the woman and the partner or the whānau. And remember the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. Keep the lights low. Keep sound and our voices low and reassuring. Keep the door shut. She needs privacy. You wouldn't be able to have a poo if you thought someone's going to walk in on you any minute. Once the woman has her eyes shut, it's our job to talk to her in such a way that she doesn't need to open her eyes. Keep the birth partner included and reassured and calm. Polyvagal theory is actually really interesting, and as midwives I think we need to know a bit about it. I've only just started reading about it. It's a mutual co-regulation, the reciprocal sending and receiving signals of safety. It's the connection between two or more nervous systems, each nourishing and regulating the other in process. So our emotional state will dramatically affect the birthing woman and the partner and the whānau. How many times have you walked into birthing rooms and you can immediately become aware of the feeling in there? The more serene, the more calm, the better it is for the woman and for the midwife. If I relax my body and my voice, this will relax the woman. We can use stroke and touch and words of encouragement. It's like a dance and requires us as midwives to tune into the woman. When you're putting the sonic aid on, put it in the right place, or what you think is the right place first, without the sound on, with it turned off, because there's nothing more disturbing than hearing as we try and find where the heart rate is. Hopefully you're not using a CTG, because if the woman's low risk and healthy and well, CTGs aren't actually going to help us at all. But if for whatever reason she's got a CTG on, then turn the screen away and have the sound right down. It's so disturbing. Be open to the woman's needs, but also look after yourself. If you start to feel anxious, then call another midwife or talk to a doctor outside the room. If you're the midwife called into a room, stay calm and keep your voice quiet and low. Don't disturb the woman. To have a physiological calmness, we need a psychological calmness. Caring for a woman in labour is actually a great way to practice being in the moment. And I think that can be a helpful thing to tell women sometimes when they're in extreme pain, is just be in the moment. Don't think about what you've got to do. Just be absolutely in the moment. Don't ask her if she wants a drink. Take the water up to her mouth and say, water. She'll take a sip if she wants. Don't say, can I put warm flannels on your perineum? Say, I'm going to put warm flannels on your perineum. If you don't like it, just say no. So by doing this, you are disturbing her less. Don't disturb her with unnecessary VEs, but that's a whole other subject that I'm not going to get into here. Mostly women don't need to be told how to push either. Sometimes just whispering good, or that's great, or perfect, or well done, that's enough. They don't need to be told how to push. If they're in their reptilian brain, if oxytocin is flowing, they know exactly how to do it. After the birth, wrap the woman in a warm cuddly. That helps reduce adrenaline, and it feels lovely. And adrenaline needs to be reduced to help reduce the risk of postpartum hemorrhage. And then more watchful waiting is required. So you're waiting for the placenta now, and you're obviously watching that the baby's okay and that the mum's okay, that there's no bleeding going on. And after a while, you'll notice a little grimace, and that's when she's ready to push out her placenta. See, it's so easy when everything's normal. The mum and baby will probably manage the first feed on their own as well. Be aware of the breast crawl. I haven't been aware of that, I'm ashamed to say, until fairly recently. But if you haven't seen this, YouTube is a great place to watch it. So when this baby's born, the baby needs to go up here. The mum can pick up the baby, or maybe the midwife can pick up the baby and put it here. And the baby actually boings its way all over to the mother's breast. It takes quite a lot of time, and I think my mantra needs to be to myself, slow down, slow down. You know, as midwives, we take on so much responsibility. We think we have to do everything, but we don't. Let nature do it. Nature does it a lot better. The woman and nature will do it much better than we can. I feel really sad when I think of all those little babies I've helped breastfeed, how I've taken away their little hands and thought, their hands, they're in the way, or even worse, wrap them up and try to get the baby on the breast. You know, the baby needs its hands. It massages the breast. When we dry the baby, don't dry its hands, because the hands need to smell of amniotic fluid, which is a similar smell to the mum's breast. And the baby will lie there, and then it will have times of being alert, and it will start to crawl, push its feet against its mother's belly and buoying its head over towards the breast, and massage the breast, which helps the colostrum come down. So nature is amazing, and I think, how many times have I messed it up by trying to help the baby to latch? So yeah, I think the best thing, you know, after the placenta is born and and everything's fine, is go and make a cup of tea and leave the mum and the whānau and the birth partner there and leave the baby on the mum. And quite often, by the time you've made a cup of tea and a bit of toast, baby's on the breast. And isn't that an amazing feeling when that happens? I've always noticed that women that give birth at home breastfeed with less difficulties. And my theory is that when a woman is at home, we feel we're her guest and she feels in charge. So her behaviour is far more instinctive. When a woman births in hospital, we feel we're in charge and that we've got to manage it. And therefore we take over. So it's really good to be aware of these subtle feelings and our strong unconscious bias. There's definitely an unconscious bias going on between home and hospital birth. As midwives, we're meant to be with women. I'm sure, as you all know, that's what midwife means, with women. And I now know that I haven't always been helpful helping babies get on the breast. But I wonder, how else are we harming women and birth? And I think that's something we all need to be aware of. My final bit, why is normal birth important? You often hear, why does it matter so long as there's a healthy mum and baby at the end of it? But I don't agree with that. At its most basic, the health and emotional well-being of mother and baby at birth determines the future health and well-being of the whole family, and thus all human beings in the whole world. You often hear healed birth, healed world. I can understand that sentiment. When a woman births naturally with the help of oxytocin and supportive birth companions and has dug deep into her reptilian brain, she not only becomes a mother, but she becomes transformed. She has had a peak experience. As her oxytocin peaks, this opens her to the realms of love and connection. She comes to a place of powerful mothering. Her mothering will be instinctive. Dr. Sarah Buckley, says the problem with our times is that the passion of birth is neither recognised nor accommodated. Well, I don't believe this. I think that's very sad. I think it needs to happen more. And I think it's vital that student midwives and doctors and all midwives see how birth can be. So natural birth helps a new mum to be emotionally present for her baby, and this has massive ramifications for the baby. A baby's born with just its the primitive part of its brain working, so you know, breathing, temperature, heart rate, etc., etc. The only way the baby can get the other part of its brain working is by the mother's responding to him. So the mother needs to be able to tune into her baby. She needs to want to stare at her baby and touch her baby, and love and oxytocin to flow between them. It's all about love and connection again. And this isn't just fancy words, it's a biological imperative. This absolutely needs to happen for the baby to be healthy. So if the emotional side of the baby's brain doesn't light up, as I said, it has a huge effect, and that child may grow into be an adult who's brilliant at engineering and mathematics and language, but isn't emotionally present. Oops, come to think of it, my daughter's quite good at languages. So of course it's quite confronting, all of this brain research. It makes us think, how were we born? How were we parented? But the good news is the brain has a huge amount of plasticity, and with the right help, probably therapy, we can all make ourselves better. So it's thought that 50% of the population has an attachment disorder. It's quite scary, isn't it? So if babies are born normally, postnatal depression will be reduced, PTSD will be reduced, um, and it's thought that PTSD develops when women have a lack of control. Um, so it's how we deal with the woman through her labour, and when medical intervention is necessary, it's how we deal with that. Poor care can be a lack of empathy, a lack of compassion, talking in medical jargon. So midwifery is honestly a massive job that has far-reaching effects. We draw such a fine line between normal birth, undisturbed birth, and medical intervention. As we've probably all heard, it's not only a science, but it's an art, and it's getting the science and the art right, and they're both as important as each other. There's a campaign group in the UK called Make Birth Better, and they say just small changes that needn't cost any money can make all the difference to women suffering from PND and PTSD. And it's such things as kind language and less medical jargon. So we really need to remember this when women go from normal birth to start needing intervention. We need to be kind, we need to be empathic, we need to use day-to-day language, not, oh, the baby's posterior, blah, blah, blah. So if we're empathic and listen to her and respect her wishes, hopefully whatever kind of birth she has will be empowering and positive. But let's try and support normal birth. Try and attend a few home births. You'll soon have your confidence renewed. It's mostly about the woman, not about us, but it's about us supporting her the right way. Where women are strong, midwives can be strong. And where midwives are strong, women can be strong. So kia kaha and happy birthing.